You can see there on the left side is a fold-out cot. On the right side is the actual sleigh. So that's the CLAM Pro X300, Extreme 300. So what we've done though is I've built a plywood deck that goes on the sleigh. So you can see the sleigh here, and then we bolt a plywood deck on it, and the whole thing. Now, what this does is it makes it very nice for packing things away underneath what becomes your bed. So again, there's another thermal rest mattress. Quite expensive, but they sure are nice to sleep on when you're out, especially when you're out for a few weeks like we usually go. There's another thing we've done here is when we bolted this deck on, if you look up underneath there, there's a hook that I've built. And then we bolt them on with carriage bolts right through. And what that hook does is once you bolt the plywood on, you see I can't move that sleigh. That sleigh's tough now. It's all stiffened, eh? So you don't have the problem of the side of the sleigh coming in and out. And also, these are nice tie downs. So when you hook on these, you know, it doesn't let go. So when you strap a bit of gear on top, you know, your sleeping bag, cooler, and this holds two people very comfortably. So you've got two sleeping bags, food for two people, you know, maybe a couple chairs you want to take along, things like that. Once you get all that on the sleigh, you know, you don't want stuff moving around, because we actually take some pretty long trips with these things behind the skidoos. So you don't want stuff bouncing and shaking around and falling off and losing it. So there's something else we do. We're on a concrete floor here. But when we're in the bush or even on the ice, we found a lot of problems with the heat from your sleigh, from your living quarters, goes down and melts the ice. Or, you know, if you're actually in the bush, if you get all the dirt off the ground once the snow starts melting. So what we do is we picked up these exercise mats. And what we do is we cover the floor with these exercise mats that clip together. They're very, very lightweight, but it does two things. It gives you insulation, and it keeps the dirt out of the living area. Now, we'd spend almost 2 months of time in sleeping in the wintertime, January, February, Northern Ontario. And overnight, you know, you come in, you take your skidoo suit off, your boots off and everything, you get a bit of water on the floor. Well, with those mats on the floor, the next morning they'll be dry. So it makes it for a very, very comfortable overnight experience. So I'll go into a little more detail on what we've done with this top on the sleigh. Now, I kind of cheated here. If you look at the cuts and things, it's very nice. I happen to own a water jet table, so this is designed and all cut on the water jet table. So it makes it fit together very nicely. So these are little covers. You pull them open, and in here, there's a bottom to this. We've built a little compartment in here, and it goes across the front of the sleigh. And again, when you open this one up, you can see the little compartment there. Well, that goes right across the front of the sleigh. And it's kind of a useless area because it's up at an angle up under that hole. So what we have in there, we have our battery, we have a battery charger, and we have all of our electrical cables. Again, over the years, we've learned a few things. One of them is to everything in these systems run on 12 volts. The Chinese diesel heaters we use for heating these things up runs on 12 volts. The LED light that comes with them is 12 volts, you know, and you can get a lot of accessories and so on for 12 volts. So what they have here is these are an automotive style plug, a 2-pin plug. You can buy these at Canadian Tire. You can buy these on Amazon, no problem. And this one is a battery breakout plug. It has a fuse in it for protection, and then it breaks out into 2 plugs. What we use this for is one of them's for the light and one's for the furnace, if we had the furnace fired up. And right underneath there, under some of that wiring, you see that aluminum plate down there? Well, it actually gives the support for the bottom of this compartment. But what it also does, you see those 2 nuts right there? Well, that's where the hitch for the sleigh hooks on. So this aluminum plate sits right tight against the plastic, and then the metal parts from the outside, the hooks from the outside, bolt through that. And then it wraps around underneath, up under here. It actually comes underneath in here, and these bolts go right through into that plate and sandwich this plywood that's in here. So you're not, when you're pulling this behind your screw, you're not pulling on the plastic. You're actually pulling on the aluminum plate and then transferring that stress into the sheet of plywood that's on the top of this. Now the plywood is actually a 3/4 inch sheet. It's a single 3/4 inch. Looks like it's double here. These there's a reason for that. If you look in here, you can see it's not doubled. Just a single layer of plywood, and then this here is just so the door sits on it. But the reason for this extra little piece here, because it allows us to slide these action packers underneath here real nice. So that's where we keep our gear. I got one of these has, you know, your cups and things like that. The other one, a frying pan, and a little 1-burner stove, things like that. But there's a lot of room in underneath this sleigh, and these fit in there very nicely. Without, and you see how tight it is there, without this extra 3/4 inch of height, you couldn't slip these action packers under them. And they happened when I started playing with this years ago. These things just fit so nice in there, and they're nice and sealed, so that we just decided to use those. So then once you're all fired up, you close everything up. It's nice to keep all the stuff handy because you don't lose anything then. It's a problem with being out in the bush. If you lose something, it can turn your trip into a real miserable day. We've done this a lot of camping overnight. Well, not overnight, we usually go in for a couple of weeks. And this winter we were in for a little over 2 weeks. Last winter we actually spent 5 weeks camping. Came out a few times, you know, do a little work and head back in. But once that's all closed up, it gives you your bed. So you just sleep on that. Now, what we did find, even though these are an insulated sleigh, if you lay something against the material, it's thick, but not maybe 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch thick. But if you lay something against the material, like your sleeping bag, it'll tend to condensate, and you get a bit of frost. So this year we experimented with this material. It's an insulating material. I think this was Home Depot or Lowe's. We picked this up. It was actually I think a 48-inch wide roll. But like I said, we have 8 of us, and we have 8 of these sleighs that we're using right now. So we ended up cutting a piece up, and we were able to get a piece of this material for each of the sleighs. And where this goes, we put this in around the outside edge, right around the whole perimeter. And that way your sleeping bag doesn't actually touch the material. and it stops that condensation from forming. And of course, needless to say, it warms up the evening, makes it nice and warm. Don't really need it any warmer in here, but it stays nice. One of the other things that heard any of you who have these clams, it comes with one set of poles right here that goes through the middle of the sleigh. Now you can buy them from CLAM, they sell them as replacement parts, but I bought an extra set of those and I put them in the corners over here. And what it does, it tensions the corners out because they tend to hang in, and then up on top too. So it holds the roof up nice. So what we typically do is when it snows, these tents will, you know, they will sweat some water through the material, and it does drip inside. So what we do with them is we put 2 of these sleighs tight together, end to end, and then we found that if you measure from the very bottom edge on this side right over to the far side of the sleigh, right over to this edge here, and again I have those tie downs on the bottom of this edge, a 20-foot tarp will fold under the edge on the far corner, and it comes right over top, and we tie it to this side. And a 20 by 15 or 20 by 16 tarp will completely cover 2 of these sleighs put end to end. And that stops the snow from actually touching the material and sweating through. Basically, the idea comes from a fly on a tent in the wintertime, in the summertime, because you'll get your dew gets on the material and then kind of sweats through, eh? So then also what happens then is it doesn't melt the snow that's on top of the sleigh, or if it does melt it, it's actually sitting on a piece of tarp. So it comes off really easy. You just kind of smack the top of the roof and the edges, and it all just falls off. Another thing too, you notice on the bottom, there's a flap on these sleighs sitting right there. A lot of people put that flap on the outside, and like I said, this winter we were just 2 weeks, but last winter we were in for 5 weeks. And it took us hours to cut that flap out of the snow, because like 5 weeks in beginning in January to the first week of February, and it had basically froze right into the ground. So we had to chisel it all out. But that flap now is sitting out, and you don't want to cut it all full of holes. So it took us forever to clean it up. So